The CBS News vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and JD Vance drew 43.15 million viewers. Now, this is short of the audience for the 2020 matchup between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. And in a sprawling legal brief, partly unsealed today, the special counsel Jack Smith laid out his case for why former President Donald Trump is not immune from prosecution on federal charges of plotting to overturn the 2020 election. Jack Smith says Trump was fundamentally acting as a private candidate for office and not as president of the United States when he sought to overturn the election. Trump's federal election interference case is moving forward under the auspices of Judge Tanya Chutkan of the Federal District Court in Washington, D.C. And today, federal prosecutors indicted 68 alleged members and affiliates of the Peckerwoods. This is a white supremacist gang that sold drugs and committed fraud in a suburb outside of Los Angeles, California. They were working under the auspices of imprisoned members of the Aryan Brotherhood. The Peckerwoods, who took their name from a derogatory term for white inmates in the California prison system, embraced Nazi iconography and traded racist comments in a private Facebook group. And as the war in the Middle East widens, Iran and Israel today traded threats of mutual destruction following the Islamic Republic's missile barrage against Israel, while the Lebanese militant Hezbollah and Israel reported the first close quarter combat between their forces in southern Lebanon. And not only was Donald Trump the sole living president, current or former, to not deliver a video message for Jimmy Carter in honor of his 100th birthday yesterday, Trump made no mention of the historic occasion, despite talking about Jimmy Carter's presidency in an attempt to criticize Joe Biden. And less than a week after Mayor Eric Adams of New York pled not guilty to charges of bribery and fraud, federal prosecutors told a judge that they might bring additional charges against him and that charges against other people were likely as well. And half an hour into Tuesday's night presidential debate, JD Vance lodged a whiny little protest. He said, he was speaking to Margaret Brennan of CBS News, the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check. Well, it was lie on top of another lie, supplemented by a pair of other lies in support of even a bigger lie. That's what came out of JD Vance's mouth during the debate last night. Now, some pundits are saying he was the more skilled debater, that he wasn't nervous, that he was very fluid in his responses. But the reality is he told lie after lie after lie, even though he did it with calm and what some would say composure. And at every stage of the federal civil rights trial, 3 former officers accused of beating Tyree Nichols to death last year, lawyers for the defendants have opted to show jurors video of the violent encounter caught on police body cam. Experts don't quite know why the defendants think showing the jurors so much footage of that brutal encounter will be favorable to their ultimate defense. But almost every day for nearly 3 weeks, these jurors have had to watch former officers from the Memphis Police Department rain punches, kicks, and baton strikes upon 29-year-old Mr. Nichols, who simply tried to move or flee from a simple traffic stop in January of 2023. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go a little deeper, where we dig behind those headlines and bring you the stories that people are talking about. Well, I was super excited to learn today that the U.S. Department of Justice has launched a review and evaluation of the 1921 race massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That announcement was made by Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clarke. I saw Kristen Clarke in D.C. at the White House at the Juneteenth celebration, and we had a conversation about this. Now, of course, she couldn't tell me during that encounter what the Department of Justice was going to do, but she did say that the Department of Justice was committed to helping the families, the survivors, get justice in that case. So a couple of months later, we get this announcement from Kristen Clarke's office. We know that massacre happened on May May 31st, that is 1921, when a white mob attacked as many as 300 people, most of them Black, in Tulsa's prosperous Greenwood neighborhood. The neighborhood had gained the nickname Black Wall Street. So this is a huge, huge decision by the Department of Justice, not only for the case in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but for reparations actions that are happening around this country. Because if the Department of Justice is willing to take on a case, to review it, to evaluate it, it means that other attorney generals in other states might be willing to do the same for those cases in their states. It means that other governmental entities might be encouraged to look differently at reparative justice and reparations actions. So after learning of this news, of course, I had an opportunity to talk with a good friend of mine. He's a fellow barrister. His name is Demario Simmons. He has been the lead attorney fighting like crazy to get not only national attention for the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre, but also to get justice for the survivors in the court systems. He got some bad news. We all got bad news a couple of weeks ago when the Oklahoma Supreme Court denied appeals by Demario Simmons and his clients. But, you know, they say weeping may last for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Well, there's a little joy today because the Department of Justice has given a new light and allows this case to live for another day. When we come forward, Demario Simmons joins us and helps us understand the significance of what is going to take place over the next 90 days as the Department of Justice reviews the Tulsa race riot. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today. This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign.
Black Women for Wellness and Stand LA are standing up against harmful oil drilling in South Los Angeles. Our Bad Neighbors campaign exposes the serious health risks of drilling in our neighborhoods. You've seen the billboards, posters, and coffee sleeves around South LA. Now join the movement to protect our health, our families, and our future. Visit bwwla.org/no-drilling to learn more and get involved. That's bwwla.org/no-drilling.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard Mama hates anyway?
Since 77. I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer. So I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock is here to elevate your protection game. Using the same simple password across all your accounts, that's risky. While updating your passwords to be more unique is a good start, true peace of mind comes with LifeLock. LifeLock doesn't just alert you to suspicious activity, but monitors for more uses of your personal info and will fix identity theft issues that arise, guaranteed, or your money back. Secure your identity today with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com. Use promo code NEWS. Terms apply.
We are back, and my good friend and civil rights lawyer extraordinaire is joining me in this hour, and that happens to be Demario Simmons. Welcome back to the show, Demario. Thank you so much for joining me in this hour. Well, we both, and I would say you in particular, got some really good news today out of the Department of Justice, as Kristen Clark, our Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, announced a review and evaluation of the 1921 race massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Help us understand what this means and why this is so significant.
Yeah, well, first of all, always good to see you, Areva, and thank you for having me on. You know, this was an amazing revelation. That's something we've been pushing for almost 4 years. And obviously myself working on trying to get justice and reparations for those who suffered the massacre and their descendants. And I've been working on this thing for over 25 years myself. Wow. But ever since the Biden-Harris administration went into office, we started reaching out to the Department of Justice and saying that, hey, you guys can open up a federal investigation. It's never happened, ever in the 100+ years of the massacre. And you have the right to do it through the Emmett Till cold case, Civil Rights Act, Civil Rights Crimes Act. And we're excited. You know, I got a phone call Monday morning. Well, actually, I got an email last Friday afternoon saying, hey, are you available Monday morning? And you know, Reba, you get these calls sometime. Federal government gives you a call, you know something's up. And so I was like, okay, is this going to be yay or nay? And then they called me Monday morning, 8:30. I happen to be in Atlanta, Georgia for some meetings. I get the call. I'm ecstatic. So I have to get on a plane to get back to Tulsa so I can have a press conference with the community, because this was truly a great win for the entire community and our entire people. Like you said, this helps reparations and racial justice issues all across this nation.
So, Demario, take us back, because you and I know the facts well about what happened in 1921. But for those folks who maybe heard a little something, maybe, you know, have heard other people tell the story, tell us, someone, like you said, that's been working on this for decades, tell us what happened in Tulsa in 1921 that has caused you to be working on this issue for so long.
Yeah, man, thank you for that question. I'm actually, to tell what happened, I'm gonna back up a little bit and talk about Oklahoma as a haven for Black people. In the 1830s, Black people were part of the Trail of Tears when the United States marched the 5 tribes out of the Southeast United States. And about 35 to 40% of those people that were marching, they looked like us. Many of them were enslaved by the Creeks and the Cherokees, the Seminoles, the Choctaws, and the Chickasaws, and some were free. And then when they got their freedom in 1860.
Hold on a second for me, Demario. A lot of people might be shocked to learn that indigenous people were enslavers, because, you know, again, when we think about indigenous people in this country and the way the narrative is often told, they were victims of, you know, white supremacy in the same way that African Americans were. But you're saying there were actually indigenous people who enslaved other indigenous people and Black people?
Absolutely. And I'll speak specifically about the Muskogee Creek Nation, which I'm a Muskogee Creek. Yeah, so they call these folks, these tribes, the 5 civilized tribes. That's what they used to call them. And they call them that because they adopted so much of European way of life, including plantation-style economies and the enslavement of people of African descent and people of dark skin within their own nations. You know, one of the things that people don't understand, Areva, is that people look like you and I were here in America when the Europeans got here. And that's very, very well documented. And because of that enslavement, and some of those members of those nations practiced chattel enslavement and plantations. And they brought that to what's Indian Territory, which is now Oklahoma. In 1866, at the end, 1865, at the end of the Civil War, we know that in America, you got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which ended enslavement, gave citizenship, and also gave the right to vote to Black people in America. But the Black people that was in the Indian Territory were outside the bounds of America. And so they had to have treaties of 1866, which my 4-time great-grandfather Cal Minko, also known as Cal Tom, was one of the 5 individuals who signed that treaty of 1866, specifically Article 2, which ended enslavement in the Creek Nation. So for the next 40 years, Areva, you had a mass of Black people already in Indian territory, living as free and independent individuals, serving as judges and light horsemen and lawyers and teachers, etc. So as the turn of the century was coming along, more and more Black people were wanting to come over to Oklahoma because it was a haven, a place to be. And that's why Oklahoma created the most all-Black towns in the history of this nation. One of those towns is called Greenwood, which was inside of the city of Tulsa, but it was its own community. And Greenwood was the most prosperous, the most well-organized Black community in the history of this country. I'm gonna say it again, the most prosperous, well-organized per capita in the history of this country.
And its height, how big was Greenwood? How many people lived there?
At its height, Greenwood had about 11,000 permanent residents, but at any time, you could have 15 to 20,000 people within Greenwood because, like in New York, they call Manhattan a city. Well, Greenwood was the city to all these small Black towns that were surrounding it. So people came to Greenwood to work. They came to Greenwood to purchase their groceries. They came to Greenwood to have fun. They came to Greenwood to visit family members. So Greenwood was a bustling location, and it lasted from 1905 to 1921, but it really started to hit its stride around 1913, 1914, 1915, where you had more professionals per capita than any other Black professionals, lawyers, doctors, pharmacists. Go ahead.
I'm curious, Demario, where were these professionals getting their education? Did they have a university system there? Are these folks like getting educated in some other place and coming back to Greenwood?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, you had, because again, the Native American nations had been over in Indian territory since the 1830s. So you had educational opportunities through those traditional routes, but you also had individuals coming from around the country because everybody is wanting to get to Oklahoma, particularly Greenwood, as the Black promised land. Mm-hmm. And so there was 3 things that really built Greenwood, really 4, that made it so appealing to people from around the country. Number 1 was a freedom mind state. People know that they could get here, they could be free, and they can kind of insulate themselves from white oppression as best you could in Jim Crow America. Number 2 was land ownership. People were very focused on owning land, developing land. Number 3 was education and wealth concentration. They valued education. They valued building up wealth. And number 4 was cooperative economics. It was all about building up the community. I mean, these people, they specifically and intentionally wanted to live away from the white community because they didn't want to deal with the hate. They also owned the most valuable land in Tulsa at the time. Mm-hmm. So the massacre, while it started with the bogus arrest of a Black man, a Black boy, a young Black man named Dick Rowland, who was 19-year-old shoeshine boy, who was falsely accused of, guess what, assaulting a white woman. Oh, shocker. Taken down to the county courthouse. And the Tulsa Tribune, which was the largest evening newspaper, said, have a lynching tonight. And about 2,000 white men, wow, bloodthirsty white men.
Where'd they come from? Because Tulsa, you said, is 11,000 people, no, predominantly African American.
Greenwood was 11,000 people. Greenwood was inside of Tulsa. Tulsa had 100,000 people total.
Okay, so Greenwood is inside this larger city of Tulsa that was predominantly white.
That's
Tulsa's
right.
White, Greenwood's black. So these
Correct.
2,000 people come in from Tulsa.
From Tulsa, 2,000 white men who want to kill, lynch, and brutalize Dick Rowland. And this is one of the reasons why, even though I didn't know any of this, I'm telling you until I went to college, and we could talk about that. Well, I'm so passionate, and I'm so proud to be from North Tulsa, from Greenwood, because these men organized themselves. Some of the richest Black men in America, people like J.B. Stratford, multimillionaire in 1921, A.J. Smithman, multimillionaire, the Williams family, who owned the Dreamland Theater, which was a 750-seat theater, which was a world-renowned theater from around the world. They organized themselves to go down to the courthouse to protect Dick Rowland, who was just a shoeshine boy. Now, I say just a shoeshine boy because—
just hold a second, Demario. How did the world— I mean, we got social media, we've got TV, radio, but we're talking 1921. How did these 2,000 white men— it almost sounds like, how we populated Black Lives Matter movement on social media. But how in 1921, from the morning to the evening to 2,000 white people even get the news about this young kid?
Hey, but
about
that's
this
a great
teenager?
question. Listen, you know, back then it was all about newspapers. And so we had two main newspapers in Tulsa at the time. You had the Tulsa World and you had the Tulsa Tribune. The Tulsa Tribune came out in the evening and they printed up a bunch of papers. And on the front page, it said to nab a Negro for attacking white girl. Then they put an editorial out. And they ran another paper, put an editorial out to lynch a Negro tonight. And so these people started coming. And you know, you've seen the pictures. These folks come and they just as a frenzy, and they were calling for this man's death. And about 150 brothers went down to the courthouse. Now, many of these men, not only were they business owners, not only were they wealthy, not only were they landowners, but many of them were World War I veterans. Ooh. So they were not afraid of white people. They were not afraid to shoot white people. And they were not afraid to go and confront these white people. But they went down there not for violence. They went down there and they asked the sheriff, hey, we want to volunteer to protect the life of Dick Rowland. The sheriff said, no, I got it. And they had some drunk white man in the crowd speaking to one of the men, Obie Man, we believe it was, who was a World War I veteran, and he owned a couple of grocery stores in Greenwood. He said, nigga, what you doing with that gun? Excuse my language, but that's what he said. And he said, give me that gun. He said, I'm not going to give you this gun. And he tried to take the gun from Obie Man. And a shot rang out. Now imagine this. Imagine this. It's hot. This is May 31st. It's hot here in Tulsa. It's 2,000 whites. It's 120 black men dressed to the nines with guns. You can just feel the tension just from me, just imagining in your mind. Then the shot rings out.
Where's law enforcement? I mean, again, it's not the law enforcement of today, but whatever the sheriff or would have been law enforcement in that time period, where were they?
Well, the sheriff was at the courthouse, at the jail. The police were part of the mob. They were part of the mob. So after the shots rang out, the black men in Greenwood retreated back into Greenwood. A couple people got hit. They retreated back into Greenwood, which we call, this was the Frisco track. So they went north of the Frisco tracks. And what did the police do? They deputized the mob of 2,000 white men. What did the sheriff do? They deputized these white men. They didn't just deputize them, they armed them. And they allowed them to go and loot the stores around Tulsa to get guns and ammunition. And there is a famous.
And so hold on a second. So what was the purpose of this, deputizing them to do what? Because the teenager is still held up in the jail, right?
Deputize them to attack Greenwood. See, like I said, the reason I gave you all this backstory, like how we got here, these black people were prosperous. They owned the best land in Tulsa. This was something that the white community wanted to take their land, period. And so they utilized this incident with Dick Rowland as the ruse. Oh, now we can go and teach these, as they said, quote unquote, uppity niggers. I'm just quoting you what they said during the time. This is not my words. These are their words. And we know that they were deputized because there was a famous NAACP field secretary named Walter White. You may have heard of Walter White. He looked like a white man. He was in Oklahoma just by happenstance investigating lynchings on behalf of the NAACP when this all popped off. Walter White, who was black, who looked like a white man, got deputized with the other white man. And he writes about this, that he's deputized. He said it was easier than I thought. All I had to do was give an oath that I would uphold the law, and I was deputized. And he said when it happened, the white man next to him turned to him and said, now I can kill any nigger I want, and the law is on my side.
And so now these deputies who've been given this authority by the law enforcement are let free, have free reign to go into Greenwood, not to look for Rowland, because Rowland is in the jail.
That's right.
So it's not a search mission.
No.
This is just a go and destroy and take and rob. But why burn it? If you want the land, why burn it down?
Well, see, that's a good question. But see, when they first tried to invade Greenwood, the black man had set up perimeter defenses, and they held these people off for about 12 hours. They were actually winning the battle. And then they brought in the National Guard. The National Guard comes in and they bring in their machine guns, and they were able to organize themselves and get to a point where they were at 5 o'clock the next morning, which is June 1st, a whistle was blown and the white men attacked. They were able to cut down the defenses. And once they poured into Greenwood, they looted and robbed all of the valuables of Greenwood. Then they destroyed and burnt everything to the ground. We're talking over 1,550 homes and businesses destroyed. We're talking over 8,000 people made homeless overnight. Over 3,000 people disappeared, never to be heard from again. We don't know if they were murdered. We don't know what happened to them. We just know that they were there on May 30th and they were not there on June 1st, and we don't know where they are. This is the atrocity that we're talking about. Over 38 city blocks burnt to the ground. It is the largest crime scene in the history of this country. It is the worst race massacre in the modern American history. This is what the massacre is. And here's the deal why this
Hold that thought for a minute, Demario. What an interesting story. We've got to talk about the survivors. We've got to talk about your lawsuit and what this review and evaluation by the U.S. Department of Justice will mean for those survivors, for that community, for the larger reparations movement that's happening around this country. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
Yep.
More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Memphis, Tennessee Mayor Paul Young is taking his fight to combat the use of Glock switches to the White House. Action News 5 reports Young was joined by other mayors as President Biden signed an executive order to combat Glock switches. The devices are cheap to make and can turn a semi-automatic weapon into an automatic weapon. The order will create a task force to investigate the use of the switches across the country and what powers federal agencies have to recover the items. Young, who is Black, expects action from lawmakers on the issue when they reconvene in January. FEMA is increasing federal response to Georgia in order to help counties in need. The agency initially approved help for nearly a dozen counties, but the effort has increased by 30. Vice President Kamala Harris is heading to the state on Thursday to survey damage. Georgia's delegation has requested assistance for 90 counties in total. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
In downtown LA, the right lane is blocked with a crash on the 10 westbound before San Pedro Street. In South Pasadena, there's a disabled vehicle in the right lane on the 110 northbound after Fair Oaks Avenue, which is why you're really slow from Orange Grove. Downtown LA, there's a disabled vehicle blocking the right lane on the 110 northbound at 3rd Street. That's to add to the woes there.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. At Blindster, we offer custom-made faux wood and real wood blinds and shutters, cellular shades, Roman shades, bamboo shades, exterior shades, and more, all at factory direct prices. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Before John Amos started his legendary acting career, he tried to build a football career as a running back. Amos, who passed away Tuesday at the age of 84, was a backup at Long Beach City College in 1959. He transferred to Colorado State after one season. Amos was not an impact player at Colorado State, where he graduated, but he managed to get 2 tryouts with the NFL Kansas City Chiefs and 1 with the Denver Broncos. For 6 years, Amos played for several semi-pro teams, including one team in Illinois called the Joliet Explorers. In one game for the Explorers, Amos had a career-high 142 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. In 1970, Amos said goodbye to football when he took a gamble to audition for the part of a TV weatherman named Gordy on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Amos got the part and never picked up a football again. We all know now that Amos made the right career choice. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, got to give us what we want.
Gotta give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit ca-smp-volunteer.org.
Chevy, All the Things 2024 Truck Season Radio 30, code GWMR0294000.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You'll be able to, or you can even just, with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains, Chevy trucks have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the Amera I Can Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the Amera I Can program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The Amera I Can Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit AmeriICanCommunity.partners. That's AmeriICanCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Demario Simmons is joining me. He is a civil rights attorney extraordinaire, and he's been representing the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre, amongst other high-profile cases involving reparative justice. And today, the Assistant Attorney General for the U.S. Department of Justice, Kristen Clark, announced that the DOJ will launch a review and evaluation of the 1921 Race Massacre in Tulsa. That's news, obviously, to Demario and to the survivors of that race massacre. And it's also news to the ears of those of us like myself who are involved in reparative justice and reparations cases around the country. And right before the break, Demario was setting the stage for us about the horrific attack by over 2,000 white men from Tulsa on that Greenwood community and the devastation that they caused. Let's fast forward, Demario, to your survivors, the plaintiffs that you represented in a lawsuit, a public nuisance lawsuit that you filed against the city of Tulsa. I remember that when you started this action, there were actually 3 living survivors of that massacre. But by the time the Supreme Court determined that the lawsuit wouldn't move forward, you had lost some of those survivors. Talk to us about who they were and what the status of your survivor class is now.
Yeah, thank you for it. Absolutely. I do want to say one thing. At the height of the massacre, according to the Oklahoma National Guard, not according to Demario Solomon Simmons, there was over 25,000 whites participating in the massacre, according to the National Guard.
25,000?
25,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yes. And so over the years, I've had opportunity to work with many survivors. But at the time of the lawsuit we filed, which was September 1, 2020, we had 3 living survivors. That was 110-year-old Mother Viola Ford Fletcher, now 109-year-old Mother Leslie Benefield Randall, who will be 110 in November 10th. And we had Uncle Red Hughes Van Ellis, who was the baby brother of Mother Fletcher. He was 102 years old when he passed away October 10th. And that was a real devastating blow for us because Uncle Red was such a, you met him, you knew him, you saw him. He was such a magnificent person. He had so much life and he was so invigorated in this fight. He was a World War II combat veteran. He raised, I think it was 7 or 8 children by working literally 6.5 days a week for decades. He was someone that felt very strongly that justice for Greenwood meant justice for Black people throughout this country. He understood, as he talked about, because of what happened in the massacre, he and his sisters, they didn't get the opportunity to get good education because they were run out of Tulsa and moved to a very small country town called Claremore, or actually east of Claremore at the time. And I was living out there, literally living in a tent. Went from a house inside of a bustling Black city to living as a tent. Now he was Uncle Red he was an infant at the time of the massacre, but this is what his family experienced. And so to lose him was a big blow. And obviously, as you alluded to, last July 2023, our trial court dismissed our case. After the previous year, as you know, Areva, in May of 2022, she said we could move forward with our case. Then she comes back and dismisses our case a year later. We go through the Oklahoma Supreme Court process. They accept the case, which was a great victory for us. They set oral hearings or argument, which I was very fortunate to give. I had never, I've been practicing law 20 years this year. I had never argued at the Oklahoma Supreme Court. And that was our first argument, and it went fantastic. And we felt really, really good about our chances, but unfortunately we lost 8-1. And then we filed for a petition for rehearing, basically saying, hey guys, you got this wrong. Why don't you give us another opportunity? And just a couple of weeks ago, they denied that. So that phase of that litigation was over with. But we
Let me ask you this, Mario, about the plaintiffs, though. So you told us about those 3 extraordinary African Americans, but you also talked about the thousands of people whose lives were impacted. How is it that just those 3 ended up being the plaintiffs in the lawsuit?
Well, because that particular lawsuit was a public nuisance lawsuit, which Oklahoma is one of a handful of states around the country that you can bring these public nuisance type actions. And so really they were there standing in the shoes of the community, because the public nuisance is for the area of the community that was destroyed or that's suffering the nuisance. And we're asking for abatement, which means to fix it. And so while they're obviously were the best plaintiffs because they were living survivors, the public nuisance litigation was for the entire Greenwood community. And the way we pled it, we believe that it was appropriate to say the remedies should extend even beyond the Greenwood community, because the damage was beyond the Greenwood community, even though the remedy needed to be tied to the Greenwood community. So when we talked about scholarships and victim compensation funds, things of that nature, we wanted to have a mechanism where people that was not even living in Tulsa anymore could have an opportunity to participate. Obviously, that was thrown out of our case early on. The court said we couldn't do that. We said, fine, we'll continue to move forward.
Let me ask you this. I'm sorry, I should have asked you before, but I think this is important to the story. The city's burned down, like you said, the homes and businesses are robbed. What ultimately became of that community? Was it rebuilt? Did it become a bustling Black community all over again? Did the white Tulsa community take the property? Like, what happened to people? Just because you burn my house down doesn't mean you now own my land.
Well, kind of all of the above. There were definitely land takings that were taken, and the white community still owns today. So that did happen. There were some people that were fortunate to rebuild some semblance of what they had before. And then there were some people that just were either killed or run out of town, like J.B. Stratford, attorney J.B. Stratford, who was the richest man in Greenwood at the time. He owned the Stratford Hotel, which was the largest African-American owned hotel in the nation at the time. Burnt down to the ground. They charged him with the massacre. They said he was the cause of it, ran him out of town. He had to go to Chicago. He could never come back to Tulsa because he had a warrant out for his arrest from 1921 to 2007. I'm gonna say that again. He had a warrant out for his arrest from 1921 to 2007. You got A.J. Smitherman, another lawyer, but he was the editor-in-chief and owner of the Tulsa Star newspaper, which was the first African-American owned newspaper to have a national circulation. Again, burnt down to the ground. He was ran out of town, first to Boston, Massachusetts, and then he was relocated to Buffalo, New York. He was so afraid that they would come and get him that he got to Buffalo, New York, so he could get close to Canada if he needed to do so. And so those individuals couldn't rebuild. Now, a lot of Tulsa was able to Greenwood was able to come back somewhat, become another bustling community in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. And then what happened? Urban development, which is very
But when he
similar.
came back in the 30s and 40s, was it predominantly black still?
It was predominantly black. It was predominantly black, definitely predominantly black. And just like your clients out in Palm Springs, I think it's the Palm Springs 14, Section 14 is your clear case. Urban renewal came in. We call it Negro removal here. And they came in and they committed a second massacre. They came in and took what they wanted. They moved the black community further away from downtown, further north. And then they put in I-244, which was very common around this country, to put in the highway. People don't understand these highways were put in. Number one, they destroy black communities. They take hundreds of pieces of property, but they also will create a physical barrier to continually segregate the black community behind this concrete barrier. Now, in today's world, because we have so much fluidity, we can move around so easy, technology, we don't understand how powerful of a symbol it was in the 50s and the 60s to have this huge highway come in and imprison you. Now I've destroyed your businesses. I've taken your land. I put you behind this highway. And now what's going to happen? You're just going to slowly suffer and die out on the vine. And that's what happened to Greenwood. By 1980, Greenwood was pretty much no more. It was a shell of itself. Property ran down. Now you got gentrification. So now today, fast forward to today, Greenwood is built up. Greenwood is beautiful. Greenwood has big office buildings and high rises and banks and hotels.
Okay, but who lives there? Is it predominantly black?
It is white.
Wow.
Everything that I've described to you as far as the business district of Greenwood is white owned. The banks, the office buildings, the hotels, the event centers, the restaurants. There is not one piece of property on the old business district of Greenwood that is black owned besides Vernon AME Church, which is one of the surviving churches, Mount Zion Church, which is another surviving church, and then you have what we call the Greenwood Cultural Center, which is a black institution that was built in the mid 1990s because of we had two fantastic local legislators, Representative Don Ross and Senator Maxine Horner, who's no longer with us, made that happen. But the thing about that is the city owns the land. They own the building, but the city owns the land and they lease it back to the cultural center, on a long-term lease. Then they put a University of Oklahoma State University, Tulsa. They put that in Greenwood. And so it is what I always say. Yeah, you happy about Greenwood now. Yeah, you want to tell the story about Greenwood now. Yeah, you're excited about people coming to Greenwood for tourism because you own everything.
Yeah. Well, we got to talk about this new breaking development with Kristen Clark, the Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division for the Department of Justice. Some good news.
Excellent.
As difficult as it has been, and we are so grateful for your fight and for your persistence and your tenacity and your skills. Really good news coming out of that DOJ. When we come forward, we got to learn from Demario what he expects Kristen Clark and her team to do and how might it help the fight for this community. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
All right.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number and put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
October 2nd is California Clean Air Day. Go Metro for free and help cut down on pollution and traffic. It's our way of thanking you because every ride makes a difference. Let's clear the air together. Ready to go right now? Head to metro.net.
Linking social justice and climate justice all year long. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
For Commonwealth McCann, this is Chevy Radio. Title of the spot is Retail October All the Things 2024 Silverado 1500 Radio 0% APR 60. ISCI code is GWMRO 33400. This is a 60 seconds, English, stereo, full mix.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You can even just with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains. Chevy Silverado, the first ever Silverado EV, Colorado and Tahoe have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. It's Chevy truck season. Get 0% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together let's drive. 0% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 9.3%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 10/31/24.
We are back, and Demario Solomon Simmons is joining us. He is a civil rights attorney in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he has been representing the survivors of the Tulsa race massacre, individuals who he said are really standing in for the community of Greenwood, seeking justice for those that lost so much in that 1921 race massacre. The courts weren't too friendly to the case filed by Demario, but there was hope. And there is still hope, a ram in a bush, I would call it.
Yeah.
That's Attorney General Kristen Clarke. Talk to us about this news today that the Department of Justice has launched a review and evaluation of the race massacre.
Yeah, we were very thankful to Kristen Clarke, who's been a long time, fighter for justice and civil rights and a friend that we've all known. But hey, she works for the Department of Justice, and we had to go through that process. I mean, I had so many meetings with her and her staff. We sent so many hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pages of documents to her. And we kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally, they're going to open what they're calling a review and evaluation. They made it very clear that they don't anticipate that they're going to be able to prosecute anyone because they don't think anyone is still living. But here's the deal, Areva, and I want everybody to hear this. We firmly believe strongly that the corporations that participated in the massacre, participated in the mayhem, the murder, and participated in the cover-up, the conspiracy to cover up the murders, they should be prosecuted. And so we will be pushing and doing everything we can to provide additional information to the Department of Justice. We're calling on any one of you, anyone that's listening, that you think you may have information or documents that may be helpful that the Department of Justice needs to hear or see. Reach out to us at justiceforgreenwood.org. That's justiceforgreenwood.org, justiceforgreenwood.org. We're going to be working with our descendant communities throughout the country. We have one of our largest descendant communities is Southern California. We also have Kansas City, Chicago, the DFW area, etc. But if you're listening right now and you're in Southern California and you are part of the Justice for Greenwood Network, or you think maybe your family was involved in the massacre, or you know of someone who may have had a family member, please reach out with us, because what we've been told, Areva, is that over the next 90 days, they're going to do this evaluation and review, and they're going to produce a report by the end of the year. So we're talking about 90 days.
Yeah, let me ask you this. So you talked about corporations that you say were involved, complicit in some way. Do you have the names of those corporations?
Yes.
And were these corporations that were in Greenwood or in Tulsa? And give us an example of what some of these corporations look like.
Sure. I'll give you the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce, their members participated in the massacre. We know that for a fact. And then after the massacre, it was the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce that put together what they called at the time, not my words, intern camps and concentration camps, where they held the Black survivors in these camps for up to a year. And wow. they gave these individuals green badges that they had to wear. And many of them could not leave unless they were signed out by a white person. And then they enslaved them and forced them to clean up the wreckage without pay. That is slavery. The chamber.
And what authority did they have to incarcerate? Were these individuals tried? Was there a trial or of some sorts where they were, convicted by their peers for some crimes and then sentenced to this prison?
Martial law was declared. The city of Tulsa put together what they call the Public Welfare Board, which was run by the chamber, and the chamber set this up. They first came out and said, hey, we're sorry about this. We're going to do everything to rebuild Greenwood. But then they realized, this is a big embarrassment. We can't let the world know what actually happened. So they tried to cover it up. And in fact, Areva, get this, people from around the nation who heard about this, particularly Black communities, they were sending money in to the Greenwood survivors. The chamber was keeping the money.
Wow.
Or sending the money back. This is all documented information. You have the chamber. You have the city of Tulsa itself.
So who declared this martial law? Was that the city or the governor? Or?
The governor declared the martial law based upon what was happening.
Under this martial law, this Chamber of Commerce was empowered to pick someone off the street and say, come here, I'm going to put you in this internment camp?
I don't know if they were empowered. They did it. And they kept them there. And then it was the chamber along with the city. So in Oklahoma, I don't know how it is in California, but in Oklahoma, cities are corporations, municipal corporations. There are also other corporations like the Sinclair Oil Company that utilize their planes to drop bombs on the community of Greenwood. Tulsa is the first location in America to have bombs dropped from the sky. In fact, many people don't realize that the Gap Band is from Tulsa. That means Greenwood, Archer, and Pine Band, which is the three main streets of Greenwood. And that particular song, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, is about the massacre.
Wow. I didn't know.
The Gap Band, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, is about the massacre. And so these organizations also, what about the insurance companies who conspired with the city and the county and the state not to pay their insurance claims? Some insurance companies that are today still in operations, like Chubb, like AIG, like the Hartford. These are organizations that we've identified that refuse to pay their insurance claims because the city and the state wrongfully and unjustly labeled this a riot.
So back to Kristen Clark in the Department of Justice. They're going to do this review and evaluation. They've told you there are no individuals still living that could be prosecuted for the murders. And you say, well, okay, they're not individuals, but there are these corporations, you've just named a list of them, that can be prosecuted because of their conspiracy, because of their complicity, because of the actions that they took to harm, to murder, to,
murder, we
understand
understand
these people.
Yeah, the statute of limitations on everything is run except for murder, right? So we know people were murdered, and we know there was a conspiracy of silence. We know that in fact, right now, Reva, they're digging up the mass graves that they denied existed for 80 plus years. We fought on that forever. They finally agreed that they do exist. Then they dug up folks, and now they're actually able to identify some of the individuals that were killed in the mass graves. This is just happening right now, real time.
Yeah, no, we are out of time, Damari. This story, every time I hear you tell it, it gets more and more interesting. We learn more and more facts about this atrocity. Thank you so much again for your work, for your diligence on this. We're going to be watching very carefully what happens over the next 90 days and hoping that the Department of Justice provides some modicum of justice because the court systems refuse to do so. Again, Damario Solomon Simmons representing survivors of that horrific massacre in Greenwood, Oklahoma, 1921. Stay with us when we come forward. More on KBLA Talk 1580.
Money for relocation and a take